Welcome to another episode of Bluecorp Techbytes. Last time we spoke about cloud cost optimization with the Director of Engineering at Apptio. Today with us, we have Mr. Bill Schmarzo, former CIO at Hitachi Vantara. I could actually spend a whole session talking about Bill and, of what his accomplishments are, but I'll quickly go through a quick introduction about him. So Bill, he is an honorary professor and he's the Dean of Big Data at the University of San Francisco School of Management and also at NUI Galway University London. He is also the creator of Big Data MBA and he has also written 4 books. If you look at Bill's experience, I think he has around 40 years of experience in the industry, including being the CTO at Dell EMC Global Services. And we have Bill joining us from Palo Alto, California. Welcome to the show, Bill. It's an honor to have you with us.
Shahib, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. So, Bill, to start off with, to start our session off with, there are in your Big Data MBA video series, I think you've spoken about BI, business intelligence. You've spoken about data science. So now these words, BI, data science, big data, all these are trending words in the industry today. So could you talk a little about what they are and how they complement each other?
Good. Well, Shihab, the thing about, I have a lot of experience in the BI space. I was very fortunate in the late 1980s to be involved in a project with Procter & Gamble at a company called Metaphor Computers, where some of the very first early work happening in BI happened there. And the BI space is critical foundation because if organizations haven't identified the reports and the dashboards and the metrics against which they're going to measure success and progress, well, then they're sort of doomed. So you need to have this business intelligence foundation that tells you how the business is doing and it tells you, flags the key variables and metrics against which you're measuring progress and success. Data science doesn't replace BI, and data science is not BI 3.0. Data science has a different objective. If we think about BI as being the vehicle that's helping us to monitor the state of the business, data science helped me to predict what's likely to happen so I can prescribe corrective actions. Now, what's beautiful, so it's got a different focus. It complements BI very well. But what we're learning as well is when you make predictions, you also want to measure the effectiveness of those decisions. How did they do? And guess what's a perfect tool for doing that? BI, right? So there's this loop that happens where you've got the BI system telling you what's happening. You got the data science system trying to predict what's going to happen and prescribe actions. You have the BI system measuring how effective those decisions were, and it loops back around. So the BI and data science stuff are very complementary, though the approaches are very, very different. Just the tools you use, the mindset you use. A person who does BI may not be a very good data scientist, and a person who's a good data scientist may not be a very good business analyst. So they very much force the organizations to think about creating an analytics team, a team that knows how to do both of these disciplines and how to collaborate around how do you provide value to your customer or your client.
Understood, Bill. So, Bill, you were the first to coin the phrase 4 M's of big data, make me more money, which is very interesting. So, we as a fact, we know that data is the new oil, without a doubt, but it is not much of use if you use it, in its crude format, just like how crude oil is. So, Bill, how could organizations, start to monetize the data that they already have?
Great question. And some backdrop on the 4 M's of big data. What had happened is I had been in a series of meetings with customers, mostly CEO and that level. And they just didn't really care at all about the 3 V's of big data. Volume, variety, and velocity, and trying to educate them on the 3 V's of big data was a total waste of time. When in reality, what they want to do is they want to figure out, how do I leverage data to make more money? And so we sort of reframed our conversations with them to say, let's not talk about the technology. Let's not even talk about the data. let's start the conversation by understanding where are the sources of value creation for the organization. A simple question like, how do you make money? So when we started having those conversations with companies and say, well, how do you make money? They started saying things like, well, we need to improve customer acquisition. We need to be able to improve customer retention. We need to be able to improve customer cross-sell and reduce unplanned operational downtime. And they knew what they're trying to do to make money. And so now when you have that as a frame, then the data and the analytics now know what they're trying to achieve. So instead of just trying to throw random data and analytics out there and seeing and hoping that you can make money from it, instead, let's focus on the money conversation. Let's focus on the data monetization conversation. And the data monetization conversation must start with how the customer makes money. If you don't go there, then you have no idea what data is important. You have no idea what analytic tools you're going to need. You don't have any idea what analytic models you're going to need. Even within the data itself, you can't distinguish signal from noise if you don't know the use case you're going after. So that's how the whole 4 M's of big data sort of evolved, so that we could have a conversation with the executive suite and not get them all hung up on this stupid 3 V's of big data stuff they didn't care about. But you also asked a really good point. So companies have a wealth of data. They've spent tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on operational systems to gather all this data. How do they get value from it, right? The number one conversation I have with CIOs is, I don't know how to make money off my data. I need to have a data monetization strategy. And a lot of these folks think that a data monetization strategy means, oh, I got to find a way to sell my data. No. It's not a sell your data aspect. It's not a value in exchange conversation that you would think about from an accounting perspective. It's a value in use, which you would think about from an economics perspective. And it's how you use that data to then address those use cases where the company makes money. And when you have that conversation, everything makes sense. You can literally hear light bulb blip, 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 going off in the conference room. People go, oh, well, that's pretty easy, right? What am I missing? I'm like, you're not missing a thing. It's, if you want to be successful, you have to start with the right frame. And I think what happens in the big data, data science, even the BI conversations, is we get so fixated on the technology and the data, we forget that we're trying to actually do something with it.
Understood. So Bill, in the initial question, you spoke about the loop. You had a very amazing infographic on big data MBA, which I think spoke about the big data story map. So could you please take our viewers through the typical journey of data science and big data? Because, I've seen companies still having, a big data warehouse with, ETL processors, with some visualization tools. And, they think that they're taking the maximum out of the data sitting with them.
Can you see the infographic? Is it there?
Yes, I could see it.
Well, so a little bit of a background on this. This was actually, I created this in 2013 when I was at EMC. And it really, at that point in time, sort of summarized all the different conversations I was having with both CIOs and the IT teams, but also with the executive row, mahogany row, CXO, CEO kind of conversation. And what really came out really clear was there was this disconnect between the left-hand side, which is we call the traditional town, which is the BI DTL world that businesses were investing in, but weren't seeing the kind of return on investment they wanted, right? They were throwing money into BI, but they couldn't articulate very clearly how I was making money from that, to a transition to this, what I call value creation city, right? On how are you going to operationalize big data? How are you going to identify, codify, scale, and the sources of value that are buried in the data? So we created, as you can see kind of in the middle chart, there's the light flashing between traditional town and value creation town, we call it the business model maturation, which is really the big data business model maturity index. That was the very first iteration of that, and how we could help organizations cross that chasm from the BI world to build on the BI world, but to cross that chasm to get over into how do I leverage the very detailed granular insights about my customers, my product, and my operations that can drive new sources of value. So that was kind of the backdrop of it. The other thing I would say, I mean, it's full of all kinds of interesting things. The value journey is now something I talk about called the value engineering process. So we've learned in that process. There's the value chain process there, which is all around the economics of data and analytics. And the one I think is really kind of interesting is I had at the bottom there, I went with the visual of a river. This is before we started talking about data lakes, right? I had a river because to me, data flow, right? This is where the 3 V's came in. You had the volume of data, which to me was very deep, right? You had deep insights about your customers, your product, and your operations. You had a wide variety of data sets, which is about the diversity of unstructured and structured data that I could bring in, consumer comments along with point of sales data, along with, social media data. And then the final one was this velocity, this idea that I could actually transition from a batching world to a near real time, or in some cases, a real time environment. So the only thing I really got wrong on this, I think in hindsight, is I went with a river and the world went with a lake. So that's that.
Okay, Bill. So Bill, talking about data science, we see data science behind, let's say every simple day-to-day activities, from hailing a cab, doing a bank transaction, or even when, watching a movie on Netflix. So Bill, can small organizations, smaller companies compete with giants on this area?
Oh, I would say undoubtedly not only compete, but beat. And here's the reason why I say that. First off, most organizations have a lot more data than they realize. They maybe haven't pulled it all together. They haven't created a data warehouse for their operational data. They've not built a data lake to bring in all the other data sources, but they've got data scattered across the organization. Organizations don't suffer from lack of data. And while they may not have the depth of data science expertise that the bigger organizations have, they can find data scientists, because in a smaller organization, a data scientist does a lot more than just build models, right? That's, to a lot of data scientists, that's where the fun is. But here's the winning card for these medium-sized organizations. At the end of the day, if your data scientist builds these great models, but nobody deploys them and nobody uses them, and you don't learn from the use of them, then why bother? And many organizations have these organizational silos where, first off, you can't share data easily across the silos. And then even then, the data science team has a hard time making sure that their work that they're doing has a voice in the operations of the business. And so you find a lot of big organizations, the data scientists are basically pushing a rope, trying to get people to listen to, hey, I know what customers are at risk of leaving. Hey, I know what marketing programs are better. I know what parts are going to fail. And sometimes they're just yelling into a tornado. No one's hearing them. You get into a small organization, and the person who owns the data science initiatives, who owns the data monetization initiatives, isn't necessarily the CIO, it's now the CEO. And when you have the CEO's attention, you can win. So I actually think that medium-sized organizations have a huge advantage because they can act more quickly, they can deploy more quickly. And if you can act more quickly and deploy more quickly, then you get the chance to leverage the economies of learning, right? We know in this space here that the economies of learning in knowledge-based industries, the economies of learning are more powerful than the economies of scale. Those companies that are more nimble can try things and learn, right? If you can learn faster than your competition, you will win. That's the bottom line. So I think medium-sized organizations have a great advantage here. They just tend to get scared off by the technology, when if they flipped it over, instead of saying, let's start with the business problems first, they would find they have plenty of data and access to probably some very compelling data science resources to help them actually do something meaningful.
So, Bill, this is a question for you. So how would you envision the future of big data and data science, together with, let's say, AI and machine learning?
So there's a real confusion around tools and desired outcomes. The tool sets that are evolving around us around machine learning and deep learning and reinforcement learning and Bayesian machine learning. The tools that are evolving around us are phenomenal, right? And most of them are open source. So you have a lot of people contributing. The the rapid evolution of these tools, a tool like a TensorFlow, for example, is phenomenal, right? So we've got these great tools, but having the tools doesn't make you a data scientist. I don't mean to pick on Tableau. I think Tableau is a marvelous product. We use Tableau as data scientists a lot to explore the data. But just because you can use Tableau doesn't make you a data scientist, right? And I would say just because you can use TensorFlow doesn't make you a data scientist. Because I can swing a hammer doesn't make me a carpenter, right? So what happens is that being a data science is as much a mindset about how I'm using data and analytics to derive new sources of value as it is the mastery of the tool itself. As you mentioned up front, I do a lot of teaching. And one of the things I tell my students is, I don't want you to learn TensorFlow. I want you to learn how to learn TensorFlow. So then the next great tool comes along, you'll know that, I've got a better hammer, and maybe it's better balanced, maybe it's got, 3 heads on it or something wacky, right? But as the tools evolve, don't base your career on a tool, right? That's like the thinking from the 50s and the 60s, right? No, base it on a capability, a methodology, if you're understanding how I can use the tools that come out to constantly look for new sources of customer, product, and operational value that's buried inside the data. So to me, that's a really big distinction, and a hard one with kids and students in college who are so really want to learn a tool, when in reality you're saying, no, you need to learn a mindset and then fit that tool into it, not vice versa.
Interesting. I think you're like exactly right when you said that it's not about the tool, but it's always about the mindset. Finally, Bill, there was a report released by MIT Sloan University. I think it was somewhere around this year in June 2020, and it spoke about, I think, the negative impact to data science, because of the recession, of the induced cost cuttings. So of course, companies like us, like Bluecorp, we are in the front end of, we provide data and data science engineers at a very affordable rate. But still, I think there's a huge gap, when it comes to, let's say, demand and supply. So what would your advice be to companies thinking about holding off their next, data science project as a cost-saving initiative?
So if I were to walk into a company and say, would you be willing to invest $200,000 to make $5 million? What would you mean? Right? Or maybe it's not two, or maybe it's $300,000, and then it's 10 million, right? Whatever it is, right? The thing about the mindset around data science is, I think data scientists are the modern day alchemists. They turn data into gold. They turn data into money, right? So if every organization is struggling to figure out, how do I do more with less? How do I make my marketing spend go further? How do I make my maintenance go further? How do I reduce my supply chain costs or my inventory costs while still providing high quality, right? This conflict of do more with less is a perfect space for bringing in data science. Because unless you have data science to help you figure out how to do more with less, you'll never be able to scale it across the organization. You might have one person who's really smart who can figure out how to do this, but the beauty of data science and AI and ML models is you can take the best brain, codify it, and replicate it or scale it across the organization. You can turn everybody into your best technician. You can turn everybody into your best nurse. You can turn everybody into your best engineer, right? So the key for organizations is as they look to make money and survive the COVID situation, they need to avoid big bang projects. Small iterations, pick a use case, pick a high value use case like customer acquisition or reducing inventory costs or whatever it might be. And then figure out, how do I use data and analytics to optimize that? How do I improve that by 2% or 3%? And what's that 3% improvement worth to the organization? We are literally, from a data science perspective, when we reframe the conversation away from technology and data and reframe it around the problems, the use cases customers are trying to address, we are the modern day alchemists.
True, rightly said, Bill. So Bill, I think we've come to, let's say, the end of our session, and I would like to thank you for your time. It was a pleasure, having you on the show. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
No problem. But it was my pleasure. Anyways, I just wanted to, close this session by saying that Bill has a ton of educational video blogs, and we, just would suggest you to subscribe to these to learn more about, this vast topic, because there's so much into it, and I'm sure, there would be a lot more content coming in from Bill as well, and you guys should definitely follow him. I know. Until then, see you soon with our next episode on Bluecorp Techbytes.